Welcome back to DIY No Need to Cry with Ivelisse. DIY wine bottle design using stencils. Let's get started. Hi, my crafty fam. And if you're new to my channel, welcome. To start, make sure to have a nice clean bottle to work with. As you see, I'm working with a rather slim one today, unlike the ones I usually work with. I purposely chose this one because I thought it'd go best with the design I had in mind. It's important for you to know that using this size bottle caused me to struggle when using the stencil. It's not impossible, but it is more work. I'm stubborn, and when I have a vision, I have to execute it exactly how I see it. So I don't mind putting in all the extra work to get it there. But make sure you keep that in mind when choosing your bottle. Before I started, I had seen somewhere that you can use a temporary adhesive to help with stenciling. And instead of doing some more research, I went and grabbed my spray glue. You know, the one I used on my Catwoman bottle, the one that had me start countless hours of work over again, the one that had me looking like this. Yes, this one right here. Well, so much for second chances. It helped with the stenciling, but it left a slight residue on the bottle, and I couldn't get it off the stencil. I didn't appreciate either or, so back into the drawer it went. This glue has become my crafting nemesis. But in all seriousness, all I had to do was take a few seconds to do some research, and I would have found which spray adhesive worked best for stenciling. So if you're interested in using one, which you should, because it will make it easier, find one that is made for this particular purpose. I cleaned it off as best I could and continued. Let's start laying out the design. I used this particular design throughout most of the bottle. Place the stencil on the area of the bottle you'd like to design. Dip a dry Pouncer brush into the paint. Make sure to dab off any excess paint, as you'll soon see what happens if you load the brush too much. Dab the paint over the design using a light hand. You don't want to push the paint to go under the stencil. Once you're done, carefully remove the stencil. As you see, I used way too much paint and it seeped through the stencil. I also needed to pounce a little lighter. I wiped it off and started over again. This time, I get a much nicer stamp, and I decide that that's as good as I'm going to get it. I was going to go over it with a brush and more paint anyways. I figured I could just fix it as I go. This next step is only necessary because I used a very slim bottle, and the stencil couldn't lay flat onto it, making it hard to get a perfect stamp. I chose to do it this way for two reasons. My mom had just did the cutest stenciling in her bathroom, and I remembered I had some that would be perfect for executing my idea. I could have done this other ways, but those of you who know me know I don't like having to buy supplies if I already have something I can work with. What I'm doing here is using a fine paintbrush and the paint to fill in and correct any lines that didn't connect properly. This is serving two purposes. It's cleaning it up while I'm adding a second layer of paint to give it a fuller look. If you're going to do this step, take your time. This is very detailed work and requires patience and precision. As I fill this in, here are some tips on how you can avoid having to take this extra step. First would be the adding of an adhesive, as I had mentioned earlier. Just make sure to get the one that's made specifically for stencils so you don't ruin yours. Make sure to use a Pouncer brush or a paint dauber, which is similar to a Pouncer brush, just more firm, to apply the paint. Never add water to your sponge before stenciling. Use the dry brush technique, which is loading the paint directly onto a dry brush. In this case, a dry Pouncer brush. Only add a little bit of paint to the brush and dab the excess off before stamping. Speaking of stamping, that's another way to get the image you want onto the bottle. Another way to get a nice image would be to use a stencil made from clay. You could DIY your own stencil and it would easily lay on the bottle. If I'm not mistaken, I think they sell silicone stencils that would also lay perfectly onto a round surface, but I'm not sure. You could also make your own stencil using contact paper, which would also help with the curves of the bottle. Lastly, if you're one of those blessed crafters to have a Cricut machine, first off, I'm so jealous! I'm kidding, of course. That's awesome. Good on you. And for those crafters living under a rock, the Cricut is only the bee's knees of crafting equipment. It's an amazing, versatile machine that does pretty much anything, including making custom vinyl stencils that would make this project a breeze. Cricut, did you hear that? That was really good advertising, wasn't it? I really would love it if you sent me one. Once I was done filling it in, I set it in front of a fan to dry. Once I knew it was completely dry, using a toothpick, I carefully scraped off any of the excess paint. This is what's gonna take your design to the next level. Paying attention to small details is what sets your bottle design out apart from the rest. Make sure to keep your bottle as clean as you can throughout the entire process. This is what it should look like when you're done. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing to the other side of the bottle. Once I did that, I added 2 more of the same design to the sides, but I turned the image upside down. Now it was time to figure out how much space I had for the verse. Once I knew where I wanted it, I started to prep to place my guide. Okay, so there are 2 reasons for this next step. First, as I mentioned before, I don't own a Cricut machine. And secondly, although I was blessed artistically, I can assure you I wasn't when it comes to my penmanship. I did attempt it and hated it. I almost gave up, but one of you crafty queens blessed me with a beautiful, motivating comment, and I found a way to get it done because there was no way I could do the next step free-handed. If you have nice handwriting, you can skip this next step completely, although it's a pretty neat trick to learn. I learned this neat trick from another YouTuber. The only thing I did differently was not using a clear seal. Link to that video will be in the description box below. I took a sheet of labels and peeled them all off. I also peeled off all the edges until I was left with the shiny backing. That's what we need. My label sheet had a fold in the middle, so I separated them and only used one side. I placed it onto the middle of a piece of printer paper and taped the edges down. You want to make sure the tape is completely stuck down so it doesn't get caught in the printer. The idea is that the image prints onto the non-porous paper and therefore the ink will be able to be transferable. Place the paper into the printer, but before printing it out, don't forget to set your image to print horizontal, or in some cases it might say mirror image. Once it's printed, do not touch the image. I decided to just cut around it to make it easier to apply to the bottle. Separate the label backing from the printer paper. Now it's ready to be transferred onto the bottle. The next part is one of those try it until you get the hang of it type of things, but I'll try my best to explain. When you know where you want it, place it down. Once it's down, hold it still with one hand and make sure the entire image is transferred by pressing it down. Remove the label in an upward motion and that should do it. Using a calligraphy pen and gold ink, I went over it the best I could, making sure I didn't touch the transfer with my hand. Video link to why I use the calligraphy pen down below. I'm going to tell you right now that it took me several attempts before getting it right, but I wasn't giving up. ' I would clean the bottle with a cotton pad and a little bit of alcohol and start over again. Once I finally got it right, I let it dry and gently went over it again using a toothpick dipped in the ink instead of the pen. I was afraid to go over it again with the calligraphy pen because I didn't want to scratch off the existing ink and I didn't want to create different lines as it was my first time using it. I just didn't want to risk ruining it, so I used the toothpick. This was extremely tedious, but I really didn't know of any other way to accomplish what I wanted. Again, feel free to share any tips, tricks, and trades with the rest of us if you do. Either way, I'm excited I was able to achieve my goal, and that's all that matters. From here on out, it was easy peasy. Well, in the sense that I was back to adding the rest of the design with the stencil, which I was comfortable with. It was still time consuming, but I was back in my element. There's no need to repeat the steps for the stenciling, so enjoy this quick montage of where I placed all the rest of the designs, and I'll be back to show you the final touches. Okay, my crafty fam, it's almost done. If you've watched the entire video up to this point, thank you! High five! It's viewers like you that help this channel grow. Don't forget to smash that like button to let me know you want more videos. Once the entire design was done, I painted the rim of the bottle and let that dry. Once that was dried, I scraped off anywhere in the design that had dots. Clean off all the excess paint and make sure the bottle is completely clean. Seal it with your favorite sealer and let that dry. And now for my favorite part, adding the bling. Y'all just don't understand how hard I had to refrain myself from adding glitter to this bottle. So I was extremely excited to get to this part. Using a cap for the nail polish, clear rhinestones sizes 2mm, 3mm, and 4mm, the crystal katana to pick up the rhinestones, some clear nail polish, and a toothpick, I started placing the rhinestones. Place some nail polish on the cap so it doesn't dry out. Use the toothpick to place a tiny amount of polish onto the spot you'll be placing the rhinestone. Place the rhinestone and decorate to your heart's content. Lastly, to give it that final touch, I added this cute solar cork that has a string of fairy lights attached to it. And now it's complete. I haven't been able to craft in almost a year. That should be a crime. But it was much needed. I took that time and I strengthened my walk with God. Throughout my hardships, this was one of the verses I kept reciting over and over again. Around October, I had a huge creative spark, and I had envisioned that entire new intro you saw. I quickly wrote it down and put it away. The very next month, wouldn't you know it, I was able to set up a small crafting area. Soon after that, I had another vision. It was of this very bottle. This bottle had been requested on one of my live streams and it resonated with me. Thank you, Crafty Queen Axa, for this wonderful request. It was perfect for so many reasons, and I couldn't be happier on how it turned out. I love it! I purposely kept it simple and classy with this bottle. I wanted to create what I had envisioned, and I nailed it. But now I'm ready to get my hands dirty and go ham with the glitter. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and as always, have fun, be creative, and make a mess. Thanks for watching! If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to thumbs it up as it helps the growth of the channel and to show your support. If you're new to my channel, I hope you consider subscribing to get updates on future videos. And remember, do it yourself. There's no need to cry.